The small town of Westbrook woke up to a cool autumn morning. People walked to work, shopkeepers opened their stores, and children ran to school. Nobody knew that this day would become famous in their town's history. James Harrington sat on a bench in the town square. He was a tall man with broad shoulders. His short hair was turning gray at the sides. Though he wore simple clothes, blue jeans, and a brown jacket, he sat straight like a soldier. His eyes watched everything around him. James had lived in Westbrook for only 6 months. The townspeople knew little about him. He kept to himself, lived in a small apartment, and rarely talked about his past. Some people said he used to be in the military. Others said he worked for the government. But nobody knew for sure. As James watched people walk by, he noticed 2 men following a young woman. Something didn't seem right. The men wore dark clothes and kept looking around nervously. The woman walked faster, but the men stayed close behind her. When the woman turned into a quiet side street, the men moved quickly. One grabbed her arm while the other pulled out something that looked like a knife. James didn't hesitate. He stood up and walked calmly toward them. "Let her go," James said in a quiet voice. The men turned to look at him. One laughed. "Mind your own business, old man." James didn't say another word. His face showed no fear or anger. He simply moved. What happened next was so fast that later, when people told the story, they couldn't agree on the details. Some said James knocked both men down with just 2 hits. Others said he fought them for several minutes. The woman said she only saw a blur of movement before both men were on the ground. When the police arrived, they found James standing quietly beside the 2 men, who lay on the ground groaning in pain. The woman was gone. She had run away during the fight. "What happened here?" asked Officer Tom Parker, who was the first to arrive. "These men were attacking a woman," James said simply. But the story the men told was different. They claimed they were just walking when James attacked them for no reason. They said they didn't know any woman. And with no woman to back up James's story, things looked bad for him. "I'm going to have to take you in," Officer Parker said. James nodded calmly. He put his hands out for the handcuffs without argument. News spread fast in Westbrook. By afternoon, everyone was talking about the quiet man who had beaten up 2 strangers. Some people who knew James couldn't believe he would attack anyone without reason. Others who had always found him strange weren't surprised. At the police station, James sat in a small room with gray walls. He answered questions with short, simple replies, but he wouldn't explain exactly what he saw that made him think the woman was in danger. "I did what was necessary," was all he would say. The police chief, Bill Jenkins, didn't know what to make of James. The man was calm and polite, but he wouldn't give the details they needed. "Mr. Harrington, without the woman to back up your story, and with no other witnesses, you're in serious trouble," Chief Jenkins explained. James looked at the chief with steady eyes. "I understand." That night, James slept in his cell at the police station. He didn't make any phone calls. He didn't ask for a lawyer. He simply lay on the narrow bed and closed his eyes, as if he had expected this day would come. The next morning, the newspaper headline read, "Former military man arrested for assault." The story was just beginning. 3 days passed since James Harrington's arrest. He remained in the town jail, still saying very little. The 2 men he had fought were out of the hospital now. They had told their story to anyone who would listen. According to them, they were innocent tourists who got attacked for no reason. On the morning of the 4th day, a young woman with dark hair and bright eyes walked into the police station. She carried a worn leather briefcase and wore a simple black suit. Her name was Sarah Chen, and she was from the public defender's office. "I'm here to see James Harrington," she told the desk officer. The officer led her to a small room where prisoners met with their lawyers. Soon, James walked in. He still stood straight and tall, even in the orange jail clothes. His face showed no worry, which surprised Sarah. "Mr. Harrington, I'm Sarah Chen." "The court has assigned me as your lawyer," she said, holding out her hand. James shook her hand firmly. "Thank you for coming, Miss Chen." Sarah opened her briefcase and took out some papers. "I've read the police report. The charges against you are serious. 2 counts of assault. The men claim you attacked them without any reason." "I understand," James said calmly. Sarah waited for him to say more, but he just sat there, watching her with clear blue eyes. "Mr. Harrington, I need to know your side of the story. You told the police these men were attacking a woman, but no woman has come forward. Without her, we have no witness to back up your story." James nodded slowly. "I know how this looks, Ms. Chen." "Then help me understand. Tell me exactly what you saw that made you think the woman was in danger." James looked at her for a long moment. Then he spoke in a quiet voice. "These weren't ordinary muggers. Their movements were trained. The way they followed her, the way they watched the area around them. The object one man pulled wasn't a regular knife." Sarah wrote quickly in her notebook. "What was it then?" "A special kind that folds flat. Military grade." Sarah looked up at him with new interest. "How do you know about such things, Mr. Harrington?" For the first time, James smiled slightly. "I've been around." Sarah put down her pen. "Mr. Harrington, I can't help you if you don't trust me with the truth. Who are you really?" James leaned forward. "Ms. Chen, some things I cannot say. Not because I don't want to, but because I'm not allowed to." "Not allowed? By whom?" James didn't answer. He just looked at her with those steady eyes. Sarah sighed. "The trial is set for next week. Judge Harold Blackwood will hear the case. He's known for being fair but strict." Something flashed across James's face at the mention of the judge's name. It was so quick that Sarah almost missed it. "You know Judge Blackwood?" she asked. "I've heard of him," James said carefully. Sarah wasn't convinced, but she moved on. "The prosecutor is Martin Wells. He has never lost a case like this one. Without more information, I don't see how we can win." James nodded. "Do your best, Ms. Chen. That's all anyone can ask." As Sarah packed up her briefcase, she felt frustrated. Her new client was hiding something important. She could feel it. But what? Outside the police station, Sarah noticed a black car parked across the street. A man in a dark suit sat inside, watching the building. When he saw Sarah looking at him, he quickly drove away. That night, Sarah stayed late at her small office. She searched online for information about James Harrington. There wasn't much. Born in a small town, joined the military at 18. After that, his record became vague. Several years of special assignments. Then nothing. It was as if he had disappeared for a long time before showing up in Westbrook 6 months ago. Sarah closed her laptop. The mystery of James Harrington was getting deeper, and the trial was only days away. The day before the trial, Sarah Chen worked late at her office again. Papers covered her desk. She had spent hours looking for anything that might help James's case. So far, she had found nothing useful. A knock on her door made her look up. She wasn't expecting anyone at this hour. "Come in," she called. The door opened slowly. A woman stood there. She was about 30 years old with short blonde hair. She wore plain clothes and looked nervous. "Are you the lawyer for James Harrington?" the woman asked in a quiet voice. Sarah stood up quickly. "Yes, I am. Please, come in." The woman stepped inside but stayed near the door. "I need to be sure no one sees me here." "Who are you?" Sarah asked. "My name doesn't matter, but I was there that day. I'm the woman those men were following." Sarah's heart beat faster. This could change everything. "Please, sit down. I need to hear what happened." The woman sat on the edge of the chair. "Those men followed me from the bank. I had just taken out money for my mother's medicine. I was scared when they followed me down that side street." "Did they try to rob you?" Sarah asked. The woman looked down at her hands. "It wasn't a robbery. They kept asking about my brother. He works for the government. They wanted information about him. Sarah frowned. This didn't sound like a simple mugging. When that man, James, came to help me, he told me to run. He said to go straight home and lock the doors. He said not to talk to anyone about what happened. Then why are you here now? Sarah asked. Because I saw in the newspaper that he's going to trial. I can't let him be punished for helping me. The woman looked up with tears in her eyes. But I'm still afraid. Afraid of what? Those men weren't ordinary criminals. The things they knew about my brother. They must be working for someone dangerous. Sarah leaned forward. Will you testify in court tomorrow? Tell the judge what you just told me. The woman stood up suddenly. I can't. I'm sorry. I just wanted you to know the truth. Before Sarah could stop her, the woman hurried out the door. Sarah grabbed her coat and ran after her. On the street, she looked both ways, but the woman was already gone. Sarah stood there, feeling frustrated. The one witness who could help James had just disappeared. When Sarah returned to her office, she found something on her desk that hadn't been there before. A small folder with QONFIDE stamped in red on the cover. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 3 names and a note that said, "These men are not who they claim to be." Sarah's hands shook as she read the names. They matched the 2 men who had accused James, plus a third name she didn't recognize. As Sarah drove home that night, she noticed a car following her. It stayed 2 blocks behind, but always there. She took several extra turns to be sure. The car followed each time. At home, Sarah locked all her doors and windows. She kept the folder close to her. Who had left it? What did it mean? Was James involved in something bigger than she had thought? Her phone rang, making her jump. The screen showed unknown number. "Hello," she answered carefully. "Ms. Chen," said a deep voice she didn't recognize. "You're digging into matters beyond your clearance level." "Who is this?" Sarah demanded. "A friend. For your own safety, stick to the facts of the assault case only. Do not bring up any background information about your client in court tomorrow." "Are you threatening me?" Sarah asked, her voice stronger than she felt. "No, Ms. Chen. I'm trying to protect you. And James Harrington, too." The call ended. Sarah sat in her quiet apartment, her mind racing. Tomorrow's trial was going to be unlike any case she had handled before. She wondered what other secrets would come to light in Judge Blackwood's courtroom. The courthouse in Westbrook was an old building with tall white columns. On the morning of the trial, many people came to watch. The case of James Harrington had become the talk of the town. Sarah Chen arrived early. She hadn't slept much. All night, she had thought about the strange woman, the mysterious folder, and the warning phone call. She still didn't know what to do with this information. In a small room near the courtroom, she met with James. He wore a simple dark blue suit that someone had brought him. Even without his jail clothes, he still looked like a soldier. "How are you feeling?" Sarah asked. "Ready," James said calmly. Sarah lowered her voice. "Something strange happened last night. The woman you helped came to see me." James's eyes widened slightly. This was the first time Sarah had seen him look surprised. "What did she tell you?" he asked. "That those men were asking about her brother who works for the government. And then—" Sarah hesitated. "Someone left a folder on my desk with information about those men, and later I got a warning call." James was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Ms. Chen, today in court, focus only on the assault charge. Nothing else. But this information could help your case." "Trust me," James said. "Some things are better left unsaid." Before Sarah could argue more, a court officer came to bring them to the courtroom. The courtroom was full. At the front sat Judge Harold Blackwood, an older man with gray hair and serious eyes. He looked over his glasses at the people in the room. Martin Wells, the prosecutor, was already at his table. He wore an expensive suit and had a confident smile. He had won many cases like this one before. Sarah and James sat at the table for the defense. Sarah felt nervous. This was her first big case, and it kept getting more complicated. Judge Blackwood hit his gavel on the desk. The room became quiet. "Court is now in session," the judge said. "Case number 47,523, the state versus James Harrington." The judge looked down at his papers. "The charges are 2 counts of assault. How does the defendant plead?" Sarah stood up. "Not guilty, Your Honor." "Very well," said the judge. "Mr. Wells, you may begin your opening statement." Martin Wells stood and walked to face the jury. There were 12 people from Westbrook who would decide if James was guilty or not. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Wells began, "this case is simple. 2 weeks ago, the defendant, James Harrington, attacked 2 innocent men on a street in our town. These men were badly hurt and needed hospital care. Mr. Harrington claims he was protecting a woman, but no woman has come forward. No witnesses saw any woman. The facts are clear, and by the end of this trial, you will find the defendant guilty." Wells sat down, looking pleased with himself. "Ms. Chen, your opening statement," said the judge. Sarah stood up slowly. She thought about what James had said. Focus only on the assault charge. But how could she defend him without telling the whole story? "Ladies and gentlemen," Sarah began, "things are not always what they seem. My client, James Harrington, is a good man who saw something wrong and tried to help. He saw 2 men following a woman with bad intentions. He stepped in to protect her, as any good person would do. Yes, the woman ran away. She was scared, but that doesn't change what happened." Sarah took a deep breath. "By the end of this trial, you will see that James Harrington did what any brave person would do when seeing someone in danger." As Sarah sat down, she noticed Judge Blackwood looking at James with an odd expression. It wasn't the look of a judge who had never met the defendant before. There was something more there. Martin Wells called his first witness, one of the men who had been hurt. He walked to the witness stand slowly, pretending to still be in pain. He told the jury how he and his friend were just walking down the street when James attacked them for no reason. Sarah watched the jury. They seemed to believe him. She would need to find a way to show them the truth. But how could she do that when the truth seemed to be wrapped in secrets? It was Sarah's turn to question the witness. The man called himself David Smith, though Sarah now doubted that was his real name. He sat in the witness chair looking hurt and innocent. "Mr. Smith," Sarah began, "you told the court that you were just walking down the street when my client attacked you. Is that right?" "Yes, that's exactly what happened," Smith said. "What were you doing in that part of town?" Sarah asked. Smith shrugged. "Just looking around. We're tourists." "Tourists?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "How long have you been in Westbrook?" "About a week." "And where are you staying?" Smith hesitated. "The hotel on Main Street." Sarah looked at her notes. "You mean the Westbrook Inn?" "Yes, that's it." Sarah walked to her table and picked up a paper. "Strange. I called every hotel in town. No one named David Smith or Michael Jones has been registered in the past month." Smith's face changed for just a second. "We're staying under my friend's name." "And what name is that?" "I don't see how that matters," Smith said, sounding angry now. Sarah changed direction. "Mr. Smith, what do you do for a living?" "I'm in sales." "What kind of sales?" "Office equipment." Sarah nodded. She walked closer to the witness stand. "Mr. Smith, do you own a special folding knife?" "Military grade." The prosecutor jumped to his feet. "Objection, Your Honor. This is irrelevant." "Your Honor," Sarah said quickly, "it goes to the witness's credibility and to my client's reason for intervening." Judge Blackwood looked thoughtful. "I'll allow it. The witness will answer." Smith's eyes narrowed. "I don't know what you're talking about." Sarah stared at him. "When the police searched you at the hospital, they didn't find any weapons." "No," Smith said firmly. Sarah turned to look at James. He gave her a small nod. "No further questions. Your Honor, Sarah said. The second man, Michael Jones, told the same story as Smith. They were just tourists walking around town when James attacked them for no reason. Sarah's questions made him nervous too, but she couldn't prove they were lying. She needed the woman who had run away, but she was nowhere to be found. During the lunch break, Sarah sat alone in a small room, feeling discouraged. The door opened, and James came in with a court officer watching him. "You did well," James said. "Not well enough," Sarah replied. "The jury believes them. We need the woman to come forward." James shook his head. "She won't. She's too afraid." "Then what can we do?" Sarah asked. James looked at her with those steady blue eyes. Sometimes the truth comes out in unexpected ways. "That's not very helpful," Sarah said with a sigh. When court resumed, Martin Wells called his final witness, Dr. Laura Phillips, who had treated Smith and Jones at the hospital. "Doctor, please tell the court about the injuries these men suffered," Wells said. Dr. Phillips adjusted her glasses. Both men had multiple bruises and cuts. Mr. Smith had a dislocated shoulder. Mr. Jones had 2 broken ribs. These injuries were consistent with a violent assault. "Thank you, Doctor," Wells said. "No further questions." Sarah stood up. "Dr. Phillips, in your experience, could these injuries also be consistent with a trained person defending himself against 2 attackers?" The doctor thought for a moment. "Yes, that's possible." "Did you notice anything unusual about these men?" "Objection," Wells called out. "Vague question." "I'll rephrase," Sarah said. "Dr. Phillips, did you notice any old scars or marks on either man that might suggest military or combat training?" The doctor's eyes widened slightly. "Actually, yes. Both men had old scars that looked like knife wounds, and Mr. Jones had a tattoo that I've seen before on Special Forces soldiers." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Wells looked angry. The jury members whispered to each other. "No further questions," Sarah said, feeling better now. Wells stood up. "The prosecution rests, Your Honor." Judge Blackwood turned to Sarah. "Ms. Chen, you may call your first witness." Sarah took a deep breath. The defense calls James Harrington to the stand. James walked to the witness stand. After he swore to tell the truth, Sarah began her questions. "Mr. Harrington, please tell the court what happened on the day in question." James looked at the jury. "I was sitting in the town square when I saw 2 men following a young woman. Their behavior seemed threatening. When they followed her down a side street, I went after them. They had cornered her, and one man pulled out a weapon. I intervened. The woman ran away during the fight. Why did you feel it necessary to use such force against these men?" Sarah asked. James's voice remained calm. "Their fighting style wasn't that of ordinary street criminals. They were trained. I responded with the level of force needed to stop them." Sarah nodded. "One final question. Why do you think the woman hasn't come forward?" "Because she's afraid," James said simply. "These weren't ordinary muggers." "Thank you," Sarah said. No further questions. Now it was Wells's turn to question James. He approached with a confident smile. "Mr. Harrington, you claim these men were some kind of trained fighters. What makes you an expert on such things?" James looked at Wells steadily. "Experience." "What kind of experience?" Wells pressed. James paused. He glanced at Judge Blackwood, then back at Wells. "I'm not at liberty to discuss that." Wells laughed. "Not at liberty? Or is it that your story is just made up?" "Objection." Sarah called. "He's badgering the witness." "Sustained," Judge Blackwood said. But Wells wasn't done. "Mr. Harrington, who exactly are you?" The courtroom was silent. Everyone waited for James to answer Wells's question. "For the record," Judge Blackwood said, "please state your full name and occupation." James stood straighter in the witness chair. He looked directly at the judge. "My name is James Edward Harrington II, formerly captain of the Royal Guard's Special Protection Unit." The courtroom stayed quiet. Judge Blackwood's face changed. The color drained from it. Slowly, the judge stood up. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, looking at James with wide eyes. Everyone was confused. Why was the judge standing? What was happening? Wells broke the silence. "Your Honor, are you all right?" Judge Blackwood didn't seem to hear him. He just stood there, staring at James. The silence lasted almost a full minute. Finally, the judge spoke. "This court will take a 30-minute recess. Counselors, in my chambers immediately." He hit his gavel on the desk and walked quickly out of the courtroom. People began to whisper to each other. What had just happened? Why did the judge react that way to James's name? In the judge's private office, Judge Blackwood closed the door behind Sarah and Wells. His hands were shaking slightly. "Your Honor, what's going on?" Wells asked. He looked confused and annoyed. Judge Blackwood sat down heavily in his chair. "Mr. Wells, there are things about this case you don't know." "Such as?" Wells demanded. The judge looked at him with serious eyes. 15 years ago, I was working as a diplomat in a dangerous region overseas. Our convoy was attacked by terrorists. 27 people, including myself, were trapped and about to be killed. Sarah listened with growing surprise. What did this have to do with James? "Captain James Harrington led the team that rescued us," the judge continued. "He saved all our lives that day, at great risk to himself." Wells frowned. "Are you saying the defendant is that same person?" "Yes," the judge said. "And there's more. Captain Harrington didn't leave service as his file states. He was reassigned to covert operations. His current status is likely still classified." "Your Honor," Wells said, "with all due respect, if you have a personal connection to the defendant, you should remove yourself from this case." "That won't be necessary," said a new voice. They all turned to see a man in a dark suit standing at the door. No one had heard him come in. "Who are you?" Wells demanded. "How did you get in here?" The man showed them an ID card. "Thomas Richards, National Security Agency." "Judge Blackwood, we need to speak privately." The judge nodded. "Ms. Chen, Mr. Wells, please wait outside." Sarah and Wells left the room. In the hallway, Wells paced back and forth. "This is highly irregular," he muttered. "The judge clearly has a bias in this case." Sarah thought about the folder that had appeared on her desk and the mysterious phone call. "I think there's a lot more going on here than a simple assault case." After 10 minutes, the door opened. Richards looked out at them. "You can come back in now." When they entered, Judge Blackwood was sitting at his desk holding a sealed envelope. He looked very serious. "Mr. Wells," the judge said, "the charges against James Harrington are hereby dismissed." "What?" Wells almost shouted. "On what grounds?" "National security," the judge replied simply. "This is outrageous," Wells said. "The law doesn't work this way. You can't just—" "Mr. Wells," Richards cut in, "I suggest you drop this matter now. Unless you want to explain to your superiors why you're interfering with a classified operation." Wells's face turned red. He looked like he wanted to say more, but instead, he gathered his papers and stormed out of the room. Sarah stood there, trying to understand what was happening. "So James is some kind of secret agent?" Richards didn't answer her question. "Ms. Chen, you've done good work on this case. But from this point forward, it never happened. Do you understand?" Sarah thought about arguing, but something in Richards's eyes told her it would be useless. "Yes, I understand." "Good," Richards said. "Now let's go back to the courtroom and finish this properly." As they walked back, Sarah wondered what James had really been doing in Westbrook, and who were those men he had fought. She had a feeling she would never know the full truth. In the courtroom, people were still whispering about what might be happening. When the judge returned, followed by Sarah and Richards, everyone went quiet. James sat calmly at the defense table. He didn't look surprised by any of this. It was as if he had expected it all along. Judge Blackwood hit his gavel for silence. After reviewing new evidence that has come to light, this court dismisses all charges against James Edward Harrington II. A wave of surprised voices filled the room. The judge continued over the noise. The court thanks Captain Harrington for his service. This case is closed. With another hit of the gavel, it was over. Just like that. No explanation. No details. Just dismissed. As people filed out of the courtroom, many looked at James with wonder and new respect. Who was this mysterious man who had lived quietly among them? What had he done to make a judge stand up in silence at the sound of his name? That evening, Sarah sat in her office trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The case had ended so suddenly. No one had explained anything to her. She felt like she had been part of something important, but she didn't know what it was. There was a knock on her door. "Come in," she called. The door opened to reveal James Harrington. He wore the same blue suit from court, but he seemed different now. More relaxed, perhaps. "May I come in, Miss Chen?" he asked politely. "Of course." Sarah gestured to the chair across from her desk. "I'm surprised to see you. I thought you'd be long gone by now." James sat down. "I wanted to thank you for your help." "I'm not sure how much I actually helped," Sarah said with a small laugh. "Everything happened so fast in the end." James smiled. It was the first real smile she had seen from him. "You did more than you know. You asked the right questions. You made people think." Sarah leaned forward. "Now that it's over, can you tell me what was really going on? Who were those men?" James was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he nodded. "I suppose you deserve to know some of it. Those men were foreign agents. They were in Westbrook tracking a government scientist who lives here under a new identity." "The woman's brother," Sarah said, understanding now. "Yes," James confirmed. "She wasn't supposed to be involved, but they followed her, hoping she would lead them to him." "And you're some kind of secret agent?" Sarah asked. James shook his head. "Not exactly. I was part of the Royal Guard's Special Protection Unit. After that, I worked in various security roles. Now I'm semi-retired, but I still take special assignments. Like protecting this scientist. Yes, I was sent to Westbrook 6 months ago to watch over him quietly. No one was supposed to know I was here." Sarah thought about Judge Blackwood's reaction in court. "And the judge? He knew you from before. 15 years ago, his convoy was attacked when he was working as a diplomat. My team rescued them." Sarah remembered what the judge had said in his chambers. "He said you saved 27 lives that day." James looked down. "We lost good people in that rescue too." "So what happens now?" Sarah asked. "Will you stay in Westbrook?" James shook his head. "No. My cover is blown. I'll be reassigned." "And the scientist?" "He's been moved to a safe location. Those 2 men have been arrested. The real authorities have them now." Sarah nodded. There was still one question bothering her. "The woman who came to see me, who left that folder on my desk." James smiled again. "Rachel is one of us. She was watching over you. We needed to be sure you were safe." "Me? Why would I be in danger?" "Because you were defending me," James said simply. "That made you a target too." A sudden thought hit Sarah. Was any of this real? Or was it all just theater? Did you get arrested on purpose? James looked at her with those clear blue eyes. "Not everything was planned. I really did stop those men from hurting that woman. The rest just unfolded from there." He stood up. "I should go. I have a lot to do before I leave town." Sarah stood too. "Will I see you again?" "It's unlikely," James said. "But thank you, Ms. Chen. You're a good lawyer. And a brave person." He held out his hand. Sarah shook it. After James left, Sarah sat back down at her desk. She thought about everything she had learned. A hidden scientist, foreign agents, secret protectors walking among ordinary people. It was like something from a movie, but it had happened right here in Westbrook. Her phone rang. It was her boss from the public defender's office. "Sarah, have you seen the news?" he asked excitedly. "No, what happened?" "Those two men your client fought. They'd been charged with espionage. It's all over the news channels. The FBI is involved. They're saying those men were foreign spies." Sarah smiled to herself. "Really? That's surprising. And get this, your client is being called a hero. The mayor wants to give him some kind of award." "I don't think he'll be around to receive it," Sarah said. After the call ended, Sarah turned on her small TV. Sure enough, the news was showing pictures of Smith and Jones being led away in handcuffs by FBI agents. The reporter was talking about a foiled espionage plot in the small town of Westbrook. Nothing was said about James Harrington or the scientist who had been living in hiding. That part of the story, Sarah realized, would remain secret. She turned off the TV and looked out her window at the quiet streets of Westbrook. The town seemed different to her now. Who else might be hiding here? What other secrets might these ordinary-looking streets hold? One thing was certain. She would never look at the world quite the same way again. 3 months passed since the trial of James Harrington. Life in Westbrook had returned to normal, or what seemed like normal. The excitement of spies and secret agents had faded. People found new things to talk about. Sarah Chen had become something of a local celebrity. After the case, many new clients came to her office. Everyone wanted the lawyer who had defended the mysterious hero. On a cool autumn morning, Sarah sat at her desk reviewing a new case. A knock on her door made her look up. "Come in," she called. A young woman entered. She carried a large envelope and looked nervous. "Ms. Chen, my name is Linda Parker. I work at the courthouse with Judge Blackwood." Sarah stood up. "Nice to meet you, Linda. What can I do for you?" Linda handed her the envelope. "The judge asked me to give you this. He said it's important." Sarah took the envelope. "Thank you." After Linda left, Sarah opened the envelope. Inside was a letter from Judge Blackwood and a newspaper clipping from a small town in another state. The letter was short. Asterisk, Ms. Chen, asterisk. Asterisk, I thought you might find the enclosed article interesting. Some things don't make the national news, but they matter just the same, asterisk. Asterisk, Judge H. Blackwood, asterisk. Sarah picked up the newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Local man prevents terrorist attack." There was a blurry photo of a man tackling another man who held something in his hand. Though the image wasn't clear, Sarah recognized the strong jawline and straight posture of James Harrington. The article told how an unnamed man had stopped a would-be attacker at a small political rally. The attacker had been carrying a bomb. Thanks to the quick action of this mysterious hero, no one was hurt. The article ended by saying the hero had disappeared before police could question him. Sarah smiled to herself. James was still out there, still protecting people. She put the clipping in her desk drawer, next to the business card James had left with her before he disappeared from Westbrook. The card had no name, just a phone number. For emergencies only, he had told her. Later that day, Sarah went to the courthouse to file some papers for another case. She saw Judge Blackwood in the hallway. "Thank you for the article," she said quietly. The judge nodded. "I get them from different places, small towns, mostly. The stories are always similar. A quiet man appears, stops something bad from happening, then vanishes." "How many are there?" Sarah asked. "I've collected 16 so far," the judge said. "All in the past year." "Do you think they're all him?" Judge Blackwood smiled. "I can't be sure, but I like to think so." As Sarah walked home that evening, she thought about James Harrington. Who was he, really? A retired royal guard? A secret agent? A guardian angel who appeared when needed? Perhaps he was all of these things. Her phone rang. It was a blocked number. "Hello," she answered. "Ms. Chen." The voice was familiar. It was Thomas Richards from the National Security Agency. "Mr. Richards," she said, surprised. "What can I do for you?" "We need to talk," he said. "In person. It's about James Harrington." Sarah's heart beat faster. "Has something happened to him?" "No, he's fine. But there's something you should know." They arranged to meet at a small coffee shop outside of town. When Sarah arrived, Richards was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. "Thank you for coming," he said as she sat down. "What's this about?" Sarah asked. Richards pushed one of the coffee cups toward her. "James Harrington asked me to give you a message." Sarah waited. "He wanted you to know that because of your work on his case, we were able to uncover a larger spy network. We've arrested 12 more agents who were operating in various cities." "That's good news," Sarah said, not sure why Richards needed to tell her this in person. Richards leaned forward. "There's more. The people behind this network know about you now. They know you helped James. That puts you at risk." Sarah felt a chill. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you might want to consider a change of location," Richards said, "and possibly a change of career." "You want me to leave town? Give up my job?" Sarah asked, shocked. Richards handed her a folder. "This is an offer from our agency. We need good lawyers too, Ms. Chen. People who can think quickly and who aren't afraid to ask difficult questions." Sarah stared at the folder. "You're offering me a job?" "James recommended you personally," Richards said. "He said you have the right kind of courage." Sarah thought about her small office in Westbrook, her simple life here. Then she thought about James Harrington, traveling from town to town, helping people in need. "What exactly would I be doing?" she asked. Richards smiled. "Protecting people, just in a different way than you do now." Sarah opened the folder and began to read. 2 years later, Sarah Chen sat at her desk in a government building in Washington, D.C. Her office was small, but had a nice view of the city. On her desk was a framed photo of her parents and a small plant. Nothing personal that could tell visitors about her work. The phone on her desk rang with a special tone. This wasn't her regular office line. It was the secure line that rarely rang. "Chen," she answered. "We have a situation," said the voice of her supervisor. "Asset Kingfisher has been arrested." Sarah sat up straighter. Kingfisher was the code name for James Harrington. "Where?" she asked. "Small town called Millfield. About 3 hours from your location. Local charges, assault. Details, similar to Westbrook. He stopped 2 individuals who were following someone. The locals don't know who he is." Sarah was already gathering her things. "Court date. Tomorrow morning. Judge Samuel Wilson presiding." "I'm on my way," Sarah said and hung up. She drove her government car out of the city. As the miles passed, she thought about how much her life had changed since the trial in Westbrook. Now she worked for a special legal division of the agency, handling situations just like this one, when agents operating undercover ran into trouble with local law enforcement. Millfield was smaller than Westbrook. It had one main street with shops and a town square. The courthouse was an old brick building at the end of the street. Sarah checked into the local motel, then visited the police station. She showed her credentials, real ones, not the fake ID she sometimes used. "I need to see James Harrington," she told the desk officer. The officer looked surprised. "The guy from the street fight. What's your interest in him?" "That's classified," Sarah said. A few minutes later, she was sitting across from James in a small interview room. He looked older, with more gray in his hair, but his eyes were the same, clear and steady. "Ms. Chen," he said with a small smile. "Or should I say, Special Counsel Chen now." "Hello, James," Sarah said. "You're in trouble again." James shrugged. "Same story, different town." "Tell me what happened." James explained that he had been tracking a person of interest, another scientist with valuable knowledge. 2 foreign agents had been following the scientist's daughter. James had intervened, but this time there had been witnesses, regular people who saw what looked like a man attacking 2 strangers. "The local police don't believe my story," James finished. "And of course, I can't tell them who I really am or why I'm here." "That's why I'm here," Sarah said. "I'll handle it." The next morning, Sarah entered the courtroom in Millfield. It was smaller than the one in Westbrook, but just as crowded. Everyone wanted to see the trial of the stranger who had beaten up 2 men in broad daylight. Judge Samuel Wilson was younger than Judge Blackwood had been. He had a no-nonsense manner as he called the court to order. Case number 89,275, the state versus James Harrington. The judge announced. "Are both sides ready to proceed?" The local prosecutor stood. "Ready, Your Honor." Sarah stood as well. "Ready, Your Honor." Sarah Chen for the defense. The judge looked at her. "Ms. Chen, I don't recognize you from our local bar." "Special circumstances, Your Honor," Sarah said. "May I approach the bench?" The judge nodded, and Sarah walked forward. She handed him a sealed envelope similar to the one Richards had given Judge Blackwood 2 years earlier. Judge Wilson opened it and read the contents. His expression changed slightly. "I see," he said quietly. He looked at James, who stood next to Sarah. "For the record, please state your full name." James stood straight and tall. "James Edward Harrington II, formerly captain of the Royal Guard's Special Protection Unit." The judge didn't stand up in silence as Judge Blackwood had done, but he did look at James with new respect in his eyes. "This court will take a 30-minute recess," the judge announced. "Counselors, in my chambers." As they walked to the judge's office, Sarah caught James's eye. He gave her a small nod of thanks. In the judge's chambers, Sarah explained as much as she could about who James was and what he had been doing in Millfield. The local prosecutor listened with growing surprise. When they returned to the courtroom, Judge Wilson spoke to the packed room. "After reviewing evidence presented to this court, all charges against James Edward Harrington II are hereby dismissed." People in the courtroom began to whisper to each other in confusion. The judge hit his gavel for silence. "This case is closed," he said firmly. Outside the courthouse, James and Sarah walked together down the quiet street of Millfield. "Thank you," James said. "Again." "Just doing my job," Sarah replied with a smile. "You know, we really should stop meeting like this." James laughed. It was a warm, genuine sound. "How do you like working for the agency?" "It's never boring," Sarah said. "And I feel like I'm making a difference." They stopped at a small park. Children played on swings while parents watched from nearby benches. Normal people living normal lives, not knowing about the hidden dangers that people like James protected them from. "Will you keep doing this?" Sarah asked. "Moving from town to town, watching over people who don't even know you're there." James looked at the children playing. "Someone has to." Sarah nodded. She understood now in a way she hadn't before. "Where will you go next?" "That's classified," James said with a small,